after that, then we will take question and answers, comments, or...
Bulwinak, everybody. To the Maritime Travellers Steering Committee, commissioners and senior government officials, vessel operators and boat owners, and to stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to all of you this afternoon. It's my pleasure to officially launch our first of a series of maritime travellers' rights, a public consultation here in the Western Division. Ladies and gentlemen, right at the outset, let me say that these particular rights that we're actually talking about, they start from the Constitution. These are rights that are given to you via our Constitution. And I'd like to begin by thanking the Maritime Travellers' Rights Steering Committee, the vessel operators, the passengers, the businesses, and all the stakeholders for their active participation and support and the dedication to our maritime sector. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look around the world, there's about around 10 million odd people and 25,000 odd islands that are scattered across 4.8 million square kilometers in just the Pacific Ocean. And the Pacific region is undoubtedly the most dependent on the sea with respect to transport in the world. We are an island nation of more than about 300 islands, and they're scattered over 1.3 million square kilometers of ocean, and a transshipment hub of the Pacific, connecting other small island states to the rest of the world. Our main connectivity, ladies and gentlemen, for passengers and cargo is by maritime transport. And of course, you would have seen the presence of the Navy today. The safety and security is also about that same area that they have to look after. Most, if not all of us, here today have actually traveled by sea, whether on a private vessel or on a government vessel. And it's not just us, but our entire population. And in fact, some travel almost every week, and that's how important marine transportation is to us. We must also not forget that our maritime regions are entirely dependent on reliable and safe transportation for as passengers and also for goods. The economy in these islands is affected when the services are not provided on time, or when the vessel operators actually refuse to carry produce. As we all know, there's so many things that we can do better, and that's one of the main reasons why we're actually here today. And you've got a fairly high-powered gathering in terms of the steering committee of all the CEOs that are here and the Navy. So while we acknowledge, ladies and gentlemen, the work of the maritime stakeholders and the services that they provide, and the rights of our travelers needs equal attention in an effort to improve services in our maritime sector and in recognizing the growing fundamental rights of maritime travelers. The Fijian government is actually strengthening efforts to provide safe, provide efficient and reliable and affordable shipping services. We are taking measures to ensure the right of every person to have reasonable access to transportation is there, and we must, because this, as I said earlier, is everyone's constitutional right. Ladies and gentlemen, this year the ministry is actually working on establishing the national policy on maritime travellers' rights. And with a national policy on maritime travellers' rights, what we want to achieve is actually a balance between the service provider and the actual traveller. And the service providers are able to compete also in an environment that is regulated. So travellers also need a mechanism with respect to give them protection. They also need a redress mechanism. For example, when there are delays or cancellations of trips by vessel operators. And the policy will establish a minimum set of rights for passengers traveling by sea and inland waters, and requires carriers to provide assistance in the event of cancelled or delayed departures. The policy will also provide persons with disabilities the same rights. as anyone else to maritime services. And this way we are actually making a move to create a more considerate and a more supportive travel environment. So you can understand how important your contribution to all of this is today. The Ministry has actually studied and benchmarked a few jurisdictions like the European Union, who have adopted regulations to confirm rights to passengers when traveling by sea and inland waterways, and we're also looking at its application in Australia and New Zealand. Your contribution again is important in this because this whole thing needs to be our own mechanisms that we put in place with respect to our environment. There are three major components, ladies and gentlemen, of the Maritime Travelers' Rights Policy. There's the passengers on board the vessel, there's the cargo, and the vehicles that are on board the vessel. And through this consultation, we want to hear from all of you on your perspective on maritime travel and what actually needs to improve and what needs to be done, and what you understand as being important to include as travelers' rights. Your input today is critical in making this national policy inclusive and also robust, and a policy that is there for the long term and that provides guidance for the development of appropriate legal framework that protects all travelers. I'm sure you'll hear a little later from the CEO of MSAF, who will also give you some guidance with respect to all the conventions that we need to adhere to that come from around the world, conventions that we have signed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not doing this alone. Our partners in this process and our key industry stakeholders and the MTR Steering Committee, which comprises of the Ministry of Rural and Maritime Development, Disaster Management, and as mentioned by Francis, FCCC and Consumer Council, MSAF, and the Fiji Ports Corporation Limited, the Office of the Solicitor General, and also our Navy. We have undertaken consultations on board our franchise engaged vessels and with Fijians in the maritime islands. And these are communities and villages along our government shipping franchise routes, which covers about 80 odd different ports. Consultations have been concluded in Nadula village, in the Asawas, the islands of Vanuatu, Nayau, and Lakemba in Laos, in the villages of Nalele, Nangelevu, Tawake, Wainiika, Funikondi, Nambuuna, the Waru in the northeast, Vanuatu, to name a few. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today's public consultation is to build on this momentum and to ensure that this policy is inclusive and reflective of practical solutions. And we want solutions that are actually going to make an impact. You know, steering a ship is a very complex task, and it requires perception, it requires appropriate judgment, it requires adequate response time and physical capability. And one slight wrong move, and you shut down the Suez Canal, as MSAF CEO will tell you. All it takes is a small mistake. And you cost millions of dollars around the world. You may even cause injury, so this is actually a very important session. So you can see how important it is, not just for a small island nation like us, but for anybody around the world. It is therefore our shared responsibility to ensure that seafarers, along with the governing authorities, contribute towards the foundation of safe transportation for all Fijians. Ladies and gentlemen, as an ambassador for maritime safety, and under the leadership of our Honourable Prime Minister, will ensure that maritime safety is given the attention and resources it needs. And you know, there's one thing that we must always remember: safety is everyone's responsibility. Everyone's. No matter where we go, no matter what we do, no matter who we travel with. And so I entrust that everyone present here today to actively participate in this consultation as we develop Fiji's National Maritime Travelers' Rights Policy. Yesterday we opened a new office of MSAF in Pacific Harbour, and I gave some stats with respect to how many rescues at sea, etc., that the Navy has had to attend to. Even one is too many. So we must ensure that safety is always paramount. And as I say, it's everyone's responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, the Fijian government remains committed to ensuring services remain available to maritime communities, an integral component of our economic recovery and development. And as you all know, once a year, we become susceptible to cyclones. And again, this is a very important session so that you can actually contribute towards that, to say, look, we must ensure that these things are actually done, because we are susceptible to cyclones, etc., on a yearly basis. I have actually tried, and we are still making sure that we instill that philosophy within government shipping services, and MSAF does the same. To everyone here today, I encourage you to actively participate and valuably contribute to the consultations today. And as I said, we've got a very good team of the steering committee here. Please make use of the fact that they're here. Ask them the questions, and don't feel shy to say anything that it is that you want, whether it's from a maritime traveler's perspective or it's from an operator's perspective. So with those few words, ladies and gentlemen, I officially open and declare open the Maritime Travelers' Rights Consultation gathering this afternoon. Navalewu, thank you very much.
Components making up some jurisdictions that have brought or have adopted regulation on the liability of carriers when you go out on the